Okay, good morning. Ayin Beis, volume 3. Well, we finished yesterday. The complete Hemshech, as the Rebbe Rashab wrote it, page 1477, so 1477 pages. However, the Rebbe Rashab, like it says on the bottom of the footnote, At kan nimsa beguf Yad Kedush, that we found in his original manuscript only up to here, and it's very clear that he did not finish the Hemshech. So besides reviewing what we learned yesterday, which I'll do, I'll also lay out what I feel we should do going forward now in detail. But first, let me sum up what we learned, and then I'll lay that out. So the conclusion here was bringing back the point that the ultimate unity, let's call it the ultimate interface between existence and the divine, is when not only existence is accounted for and we discover godliness within existence, which you can call Yechud Tata, Bitl Hayesh. There's an existence, instead of focusing on its own self-interest and self-survival, egocentric, it should be God-centric, focused on God and recognizing that everything in existence is really creation, is God, is of the artist, seeing the producer within the product, seeing the creator within the creation. But beyond that, there's Yechud Elah, which is seeing the creator as being the only reality, and creation is completely nullified. But the ultimate interface is both together. You want to be able to see how God is nothing but God, but you also want to see that within existence without annihilating existence. And that is the two Das Elyon and Das Tachten, the two levels of Yichud that is possible from the perspective of Atzmus. As he says, the words here, that Beizad Akel De'es Haveya, the Gabatzmuse Beizad De'es Shavin. So from the perspective of the teacher, using the example he gave, the Mashpia, both the Chitzenius HaSeichel, that he's going to transmit to the recipient, and the Primis HaSeichel are one. The Primis radiates within the Chitzenius. It's only from the perspective of the Makabel that they're levels. But from the perspective of the Mashpia, he said it's all Nichel Ba'atzmusei. However, in Atzmusei, he is preparing, and also what he calls coming out Bezgalus will come out. When it comes out in actuality, it'll be associated with the Makabel, but from the Mashpia's perspective, it's all part of the Atzmusei. Like Michael close in the Yesavus, Gam Ba'ashara B'keich Rak B'chinas is Galus Levad. Hakol Kol Miyuchad B'tachlis HaYichud. And that's why Keil Deis Havaya is that both Deis are equally one. The Das Tach Dahin B'chinas Ayin Shala Yesh, the Ayin that goes into the Yesh, and the Yesh that's created are B'chinas Bitl V'yichud B'tachlis Kamaya Ayin, and then so it's all one. And the same thing, that we too have the power to introduce that higher level, not just of Yechud Tata or Yechud Elah, but as one, that they're both one. So we have to be miyachid beizei Yechudim together, lemeh echad be'echad. The Yechud Tata is like a Yechud Mamish, like Yechud Elah. So in a sense, as I've been spelling out, it's 3 steps. One is, first you have to take the Yesh and align it to godliness, Bitla Yesh. Next is you come to appreciate Bitl V'mitzias, that in other words, aligning the art to the artist. Then you come to realize that the artist is beyond the art, and the whole art is completely nullified, and even the fact that he's an artist, the Eid also is nullified compared to godliness, and then come to recognize that both are correct. Both, that the godliness within existence and the godliness beyond existence are all one with Etzem, with the Etzem from which those 2 tracks radiated, from which those 2 tracks emerged. And then he said, Al Kain, So just as it is in Atzmus, that he sees it all as one, like he says, by Atzmus, there's no parsa, there's no tzimtzum. And it comes from Atzmus. That's only from the perspective of creation that way. So even when existence actually does emerge, it's okay. And this is a key line, that everything that was created, everything that was created, the process of creation came through gradations of one oyer, then a second oyer, and then a tzimtzum, and then the parsa, and the whole process. But the yichud that we're talking about is what we come to reverse and come to discover, that in that process of creation, the fact of the matter is that it's really all how God sees it, that it's all like one, that hakol b'chinas hamshachim min ha'asus u'miyuchud b'yizbarach b'tachlis hayichud. U'b'chinas rak b'chinas is galus levad. So I'm going to talk about some more in a moment. And that's the yichud of Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad in Shema, all in one pasuk. Pasuk Echad, l'meheve Echad be'Echad, shegam yichud atah b'chinas yichud k'ma yichud Elah mamash. And that's the last lines that the Rebbe Rashab wrote. Okay. So that's a summary of what we learned yesterday. What I want to do now is explain this a bit more, because it's a pretty heavy topic, and what does it mean exactly on many levels? And then I want to lay out what I would like to do going forward in filling in the picture that has not been completely finished here. So, beginning with understanding, what does this mean? To say bitl hayesh, I think we all can, even if we're not on that level, we could all relate to it. There are times you eat a meal, you're eating it for your own needs. Okay. Like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, you're not doing an Avera, but you're also not elevating it. Then there's eating L'Shem Shamayim. You make a bracha, the kavana, that you're eating in order to get stronger to do a mitzvah. So what you've done is now aligned, you're the yesh and matter of existence toward godliness. Basically, every bracha you make does that. Say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei. What are you saying? That this, I'm drinking a cup of water or anything else that bracha is made on, that I'm blessing Baruch Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam shehakol, that everything niyeh b'dvarei that came from your dvar Hashem. That's an alignment. Birchas hamazon, hazonas hakoel, and all the other blessings we say in the after meal blessing. Same thing with all the brachas we make. Birchas hanenin, from things we enjoy. Bracha amezenes, beire primezenes, beire minimezenes, beire priya eis, beire priya doma, beire priya gofen, maisi lechem in haaretz. That's on food. Then there's birchas hanenin, whether it's something you smell or something that requires a particular bracha. Bracha of shechiyanu. All these blessings are not just acknowledging and saying thank you, God. You're actually connecting, aligning existence to godliness. This is classic bitla yesh. And obviously, psychologically, emotionally, that your life is not your own, that you're here to serve. Ani nevresi l'shamish eskeni. And everything that you touch in this world, whether it's your smartphone or technology or your business, is meant to all be elevated and directed toward godliness. So something which is really the Aveda that we have to do 24/7. However, as I've explained many times, Chassidus in general, especially Ayin Beis, said we want more than that. We want a connection not just to God, the God that relates to us, that relates to giving us food, giving us sustenance, giving us life, giving us health. We also want a relationship with Hashem on Hashem's terms. For that, we need to learn Chassidus. For that, we have Shema Yisrael, not just Baruch Shem, or Hashem Elokeinu, like he said, not just Hashem Echad. Hashem Echad is Yichud Tata. Echad is Aleph Ches Daled, the Aleph of Alufi Shalelam, the oneness of the Master of the world, that you are you are integrating into Ches, which is the 7 heavens and earth, 8, And Daled, the Daled Ruchas Elam, the four different directions, east, west, north, and south. So that is Hashem Echad, that's Yichud Tata. Then we come to Hashem Elokeinu, or in general, Shema, and we come to realize there's something beyond existence. That God is not just our provider. He's not just our creator and our sustainer. He is beyond that. And we begin to see God outside of our needs and what he does for us. God on God's terms. And we learned earlier about Mutfe, Murgish, and Muskul. As a child matures, so earlier in the child's life, the child sees his parents and everything, how it helps the child. But then you began to be able to have abstract thinking, seeing things outside of yourself, outside of your subjective needs. You begin to realize, 1 second, God has a whole personality, so to speak, outside of me. And you want to have a relationship with that. You don't want a relationship with God on your terms. You want a relationship with God on God's terms. So that leads us to Yichud Elah, that you're talking about God does not need existence. As he said before, the Oyer Legalis La'atzmei. Like the teacher as he's thinking on his own, not as he's thinking in regard to a student. So that's Yichud Elah. And all the details in that everything's bottled. The Mitzvah is there, like we learned earlier, Yesh Ma'ayin, that it's not nothing commensurate, and Yashem Leishanisi, it's immutable, it's not changeable. I'm not going to go through all the details, but it's a whole higher level of contemplation and experience, where you're experiencing more the total godliness of something, rather the godliness within existence. So it's not the teacher as he relates to the students, the teacher as he relates to himself. Okay, so you can stop here and say, fine, that's that. There's two levels, and I climb from one to the next. But that's still not the ultimate interface, because Atzmus is neither of the two. Both these levels, the divine within existence for sure is not the definition of Atzmus. Even Atzmus that's beyond existence, also not the definition, because God is not defined by Oyer. God is not defined even by expression to himself. Atzmus is a completely different reality. And that's where he comes and says that the ultimate interface is bringing these two Yechudim together. That the bittul, even on which from our point of view seems to be a lower level of bittul than the higher, no, the same God that emanates and says on my terms, Ein Eid Movade, Ein Sof before the Tzimtzum, there's nothing but godliness. That same God created existence, and existence can come to understand that both these levels of bittul are all part of one plan. And part of that one plan, they're united. So on the level of Giluyim, if you want to speak from Giluyim's point of view, of course there's a difference. There's a difference between Atzilus and Biyah. That's why there's a parsa. There's a difference between a teacher and a student. But from the point of view of Atzmus, the parsa does not conceal. So yes, he wants these levels, but all of them are all one in the divine essence. Now that's not so easy to fully understand because we're not God. But if you start thinking about it, it is a higher level of contemplation. Ultimately, it's a higher level of experience. La'asid love, that will be the case. Where the etzem will be begili down in this world. Today, we have to still think about it and try to wrap our heads around it. So I want to elaborate on this some more, because this is the ultimate yichud, obviously, of existence with Atzmus. And interestingly here, he did not bring the words Yesh Amiti, Yesh Anivra, which would seem to fit right here. Now, he may have had he continued to write, I don't know. So we'll talk about that as well. So that's what I want to right now discuss, elaborate. What does this mean, this third level of Yichud, or what he calls this level of the Yichud of the Yichudim, unification of the unifications, which namely is this, this level we're talking about here, Kel Deus Havai. So that's one thing. I'm going to elaborate on that in this class. Going just to lay out the layout here, since we finished Ayin Beis, you may wonder whether we're going. So there's plenty more to go. Trust me, it's not over. What I want to do after that, I'm just laying out what I'm planning to do next. What I want to do after that is point out what things in Ayin Beis have not been finished. And I'm going to list them, actually list them, item by item. And I would like to lay out those things that were not finished explaining by the Rebbe Rashab. And once we have a list of that, one of them move to the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, where they do finish the topic. And therefore, from there, we'll be able to draw back and understand what Ayin Beis did not finish explaining. But as I said a number of times, I'm very confident that we have enough to go with. We don't have to do much guesswork. I'm sure there'll be pieces that need to be discussed and try to figure it out. I'm not thinking it's going to be that easy, but from everything I've seen, it seems to me pretty clear that we can get a good picture. But first, I wanted to just find an Ayin Beis, and I've marked it already for myself, all the things that the Rebbe Rashab did not finish spelling out explicitly. And then, as I said, go to the Alter Rebbe, Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, see what we draw from there, and then see if there's anything still that needs to be understood after that. That's my game plan here, where we go from here. So the themes that we're learning here are going to continue to be part of this discussion. We're not going off to some other topic. Then the final thing I want to do after that is go back to the beginning of Ayin Beis and see how the Rebbe Rashab may have finished the whole picture after we know what the Rebbe Rashab said and what the Mittler Rebbe and the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe say. And we put together the picture, what still would be missing, so to speak, in tying together everything from the beginning of the Hemshech till here. That's my ambitious plan. If you want, my war plan. Since we're in war, time of war, Melchamte Shel Teda, the battle of Teda, and I look very forward to doing this. May take some time, but that's so that's why yesterday I didn't feel like we're finished. It's like, I don't want to say an unfinished symphony. We finished technically reading, but there's much more to unpack here. So before I continue now, I want to just get your feelings and comments on what I just said. If anybody wants to add anything to it, or you have any questions on what I plan to do. So we're going to be continuing. One second, we're going to be continuing the journey. It's not a break or anything. It's just really, I feel it's very natural flow from where we are to where we're going. So I don't feel this is like some, we're not starting a new mimer. We're not starting a new topic. It's all part of this process. I think
that it's great what we plan to do. But I have a question. If you took something that you knew had an end, like Samach Vav, and you say, can you go through it and say what questions aren't answered with that, or is it only in this one, which we think is not
Samach Vav? Everything is tied up. The Rebbe Rashab finished the whole story. He
really?
Didn't leave anything in the middle.
So in other words, you couldn't do this exercise at all. Thank you. Okay.
No, you could always go deeper into anything, but Samach Vav actually is a mimer. The last mimer, Samach Vav, says Hashlamas Hadrush. That's what he calls it. The conclusion of the drush of the.
Yeah. That's my point.
It's
concluded, but can you?
He didn't leave anything unsaid there. Every question he asked, he answered. Every theme he began, he finished. You could always, as I said, explain it more. But the Rebbe Rashab finished the whole painting. Here, the painting is not finished in his writing. That's clear. That's not even a question. I can point out to you 1, 2, 3, at least 7 themes, 6 themes maybe, that he clearly asked and said he's going to explain, and he hasn't explained it. And the Rebbe Rashab doesn't leave things for hinting. Everything he asked, he answers. So we hear clearly, it's not a question that the Rebbe Rashab did not finish the Hemshech. I'll show it to you. To me, it's not even a theory. It's absolutely clear, and I'll show it to you guys when I teach it.
Rabbi Jacobson, could I make a suggestion? I think it's a
brilliant idea. There are other single Maimorim the Rebbe Rashab did not finish. But here we're talking about a magnum opus of 1,477 pages. So clearly it's... Anyway, that's the approach, and I think it's the right way to go, which I say, yeah.
Yeah, Rabbi Jacobson, I think it's actually a brilliant plan. The only thing that I would add, I'm not sure if you agree with it or not, is instead of just listing the questions, if it's not too much trouble, maybe spending 15, 20 minutes of that particular concept that he did explain, and then you say, okay, this is what we know, and now this is a question. So that way, not only it's kind of a review for everybody who wasn't there from day 1, let's say, but also we have a grounding of what we do know, like just a little bit of a summary, and then now this is the question.
Every class, I summarize what we learned in the previous class. I mean, the Correct. 1,477 pages is what he did leave us. Let me say this, George. Trust me, I think I know what I'm doing here. And if something is left unsaid or unspoken, you'll please point it out. Okay?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question about, I think, as you said, you're a great plan. That last part, where you said you want to go back to the beginning of Ayin Beis, and you think that's gonna, the Rebbe Rashab wants, intended for somebody to learn through his Ayin Beis and then go back to the beginning, and then that beginning is gonna complete our understanding of it, or we're going to look at it at a new light, the beginning of Ayin Beis, or we're going to see how it all, the beginning is Natzan, Techilas Basofo.
As someone who's learned a little Chassidus, myself that is, and especially Rebbe Rashab's Chassidus, I've seen how he does it in all other Maimarim. I have no doubt that had he finished it, he would tie together what he said in the beginning with the end. That's what he does in Samach Vav, and that's what he does everywhere. So what I was saying is, once we get the picture, first, let's answer all the questions that were unanswered. Let's see everything that has to be filled in. So the last piece will be, what I've done anyway in many of my summaries, especially on Sundays, is show how the beginning of the Hemshech and its continuous flow leads to the end, and how the end rounds it all out, and we have the whole picture. Namely, as I mentioned, the three meanings in Keser, which to me is already very clearly Yechud Tata, Yechud Ilah, and Atzmos that he's saying here. But I'll spell it out more when we get there. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Look, I think all this, I'm just laying out the ground. I'm laying out the lay of the land here. I think once we do it, I think it'll be a lot clearer, and we continue the same journey here. I mean, you're all part of it, and let's call it this way: Lahavdil and overtime, they have different rules, right? This is overtime, but it's not different rules. We're playing the same rules, which is the same approach: teaching, questions, discussion, arguments. So you're going to feel very at home.
So are we still? Have we reached the top of Mount Everest?
This is like a bonus. This is bonus. A bonus. The thing is, the overtime may be even more than the original game. So, not in years. It's not going to take 12 years or 11 years. Okay, what were you saying? Sorry.
We will not be able to reach this overtime without learning the whole entire Ayin Beis before.
Look, obviously, it would always be helpful to learn the whole Ayin Beis again from beginning and so on. But let me do my job of trying to finish the story. Then we can determine how much we want to go back to the beginning. We learn again, or some of you will learn again. I don't know. I still feel as a responsibility as a teacher here to finish the story as much as I'm capable of. And I have much more to go. That's my bottom line with that. Okay, so let us discuss Yichud. This is a very complex topic now, because here's the question. And I know, Rab Shlomo, you've been sensitive to it, and I agree with you. There's the question the Rebbe Rashab asked at the bottom of page 1474. He asked there, since both levels of Ayin, or both Das Ayin and Das Tachten, are all one in Atzmos, so why are there two levels of Ayin? And why do we say Ani Rishon v'Ani Achren? That right away tells you this too. And his answer is, because that's what the Atzmos wanted. And within him, they're one. But he wanted these two because we need that to be able to fulfill the purpose of existence. But he asked another question. V'gam, if it's all one in Atzmos, lefizeh lo yesh shum isavos klal. I'm reading 3 lines from the bottom of page 1474. According to this, everything is Atzmos, so there's no Hisavos. And doesn't it say right at the beginning of the Torah, which we just read last week, Bereshis bara Elokim? Now, the first question he clearly answered. That was the answer in the last few pages. The first question is, did he answer it with saying what I just read, literally 6 lines from the end of the Hemshech, וממילא בכמוי כן גם כל מה שניסה והכל מבחינת המשכים מן העצמוס ומיוחד בו יתברך בתכלס הייחוד. Is he answering that question and saying, yes, there is Isavus, even though it's all one within Atzmus, but the Isavus itself is Amshachim in Atzmus and Miyuchid by B'tachlis HaYichud from that perspective. From our perspective, let's make it clear, we don't see that. I mean, we don't even see the godliness of Mamala Kalalmin or the godliness of Bittul Hayesh in Das Tachten. That also takes work. And sure not Yechudei Law, the higher level. This level is for sure purely God's domain. The mitzvah is for us to be miyached and reach this level. But from the level of Atzmos, that's how he sees his savos. So the question is, how can we mortal human beings, with the limited minds we have, see existence the way Atzmos sees existence? Now, let me make it clear. We're not going to see it exactly as Atzmos sees it. But as much as possible, how can we envision it? Can we abstract even? Because he does give us Asias here. Second thing I want to talk about. What does it mean? He keeps saying, he said at least 3-4 times. Rak b'bchinas is galus bulvad. Who rak b'bchinas is galus bulvad? Like he said before with the teacher, that the difference between chitzenis hasechel and pnimius hasechel, or in the words lamaila, between the of the ayin of the yesh nivra and the ayin of the yesh nivra, is only his galus. What does he really want to say with that? So I already explained that clearly he's just saying that it's not from Atzma's point of view, it's all one with him. So it's only a matter of how much it's going to be expressed. But it's one even before he expresses it. So also when he expresses it in his galus, it's also one with him. That's essentially what he said. But what is the real meaning behind it? So I've been thinking, and what I'm going to say now is my understanding of it. I'm almost sure I'm correct, but I can't say 100%, that what he's trying to distinguish is, and this is going to be pretty radical what I'm going to say now, but I want to point out, I have here 2 svarim I want to bring into the discussion here that I want to help us understand this last piece here. As I said, we're going to talk about that before we go to the Alter Rebbe and Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, which I hope will also help shed light on this. But let's first talk about it. And that is, remember we talked earlier that existence is yesh ma'ayin, not yesh miyesh. Remember he said the mistake of the philosophers is that they say existence is yesh miyesh, there's something commensurate. It's like you take a ball of clay and you turn it into a pot. That's yesh miyesh. You take one, a raw piece of gold and you turn it into an ornament, a ring. Yesh miyesh. So it's both commensurate, and there's also a shinui, because you're changing. There's a relation. Yesh ma'ayin is no. It's 2 different realities. The ayin is a completely different reality than the yesh. We learned this at length right in the beginning when he started this discussion on page 1467. Yesh ma'ayin. And discussed it at length. These 2 elements. That's not commensurate. It's not be'erech zelezeh. At the end of the paragraph in 1467. Erech v'ishtavus. And the second thing, that there's no shinui. As it is with the il of all, cause and effect. So, based on that, existence is completely apart from godliness. Because yesh ma'ayin, it's a quantum leap. They're 2 different realities. And only God has the power to create like that. However, that's from the perspective of creation, how God creates, how we see it, that the yesh and the ayin are infinitely, or at least not commensurate to one another. But how about the perspective from Atzmus? He just said both deis are one, and now he's saying that the savus, all it is amshachim in Atzmus. So what I'm suggesting is when he says rak b'chinas is galus, that from Atzmus point of view, we wouldn't use the word yesh ma'ayin. It's all part of Atzmus. It's only a revelation of one of Atzmus's powers to create. From our point of view, there's an infinite distance. Like he calls it richug v'nivdol. Because the tzimtzum conceals, and the tzimtzum conceals that divine that allows to create. But from God's point of view, all it is his galus, which would be a radical different way of looking at things, that Atzmus sees existence as just another expression of himself. We don't see that. Or we could say it like that. You could say Atzilus or Eir Ein Sof is an expression of the divine, but the Yesh, I'm not talking about Yesh Amiti, Yesh Anivra now. I'm talking about the Yesh as being an expression of the divine. It's not as Galus Bulvad, there's a Yesh Ma'ayin, there's a tremendous leap. As a matter of fact, the divine is concealed from us, not revealed. By him, it's by here he's calling it his Galus. And the parentheses, he actually said, first parentheses and the second one, that's Ein B'chinas Nivdol, Rak B'chinas is Galus. Hakol B'chinas is Galus B'atzmusei, because Ein Shayach Klal Yitziv is Galus Chutz L'Atzmusei. So in other words, from God's eyes, when he sees existence, he doesn't see something outside of himself. He sees as part of himself, just as he sees Oir. We don't see it that way. The yichud, the mitzvah of yichud of Neshamas Yisrael is to come to also see it from God's point of view. But that takes a lot of avodah. So I'm not suggesting that we still don't have a lot of work to do, because we still have to get to that point. But I am suggesting that what he's saying here is from Atzma's point of view, he's not just saying Das Elyon and Das Tachna one, God sees existence, it's all parts. He's actually existence itself, he says. Kol mashin esava, kol b'chinas hamshachim min ha'atzmus, umeyuchid by, and it's only his galus bilvad, which would basically say, and I've never seen this anywhere, that's why I'm qualifying. Can you say this? That Yesh Ma'ayin only means from the perspective of the creation. It's real. Bereshis Bara Lakim is real. And Tzimtzum is real. So it's not an illusion. But from Atzma's point of view, it's his galus bilvad. You wouldn't call Yesh Ma'ayin. Yesh Ma'ayin is not his galus. Yesh Ma'ayin is not Yesh Miyesh. It's not one level, the Ayin is revealed to the Yesh. It's actually concealed from the Yesh. But from Atzma's point of view, meaning from the top down, so to speak, it's only his galus bilvad. Now,
but it's
what's that? I'm going to make I'm going to elaborate the case for this with two places I want to bring, one from the Rebbe Rashab himself and one from the Rebbe, which I was actually involved in a sikha that talks about this. But it's interesting, when I wrote that sikha and prepared it, I was not aware of this Ayin Beis. I wish I was. Now that I think about it, really wish, because it would have clarified a lot of things. I would have made this clear and asked the Rebbe the question. As it is, we're going to have to speculate a bit and see if I can figure it out. Anyway, let me stop here after what I just said. Please, yeah, go ahead.
You said it's real. Of course it's real. But the real thing is, this is Atzmos that to us, it looks in a different form. But it's really Atzmos, the same Atzmos. So what is it? Bereshis Boro.
I honestly don't understand what you're asking at all. Bereshis Boro, both from Atzma's point of view and our point of view, is real. God created existence. What is the problem with that? He created something.
No,
there's a tree, there's an apple, there's a stone. These are real entities. These are not illusions. The question is whether we see as true energy. You know, everything in this world is really energy, not matter. You don't see the energy. That doesn't mean there isn't matter. We do have an outside level that is real. It's not an illusion. That's what means, even from this highest level, from Atzmos, he created it. He says, Kol Mashin Isava. He doesn't say, Kol Mashin Isava Eina Nimtze. He doesn't say, Kol Mashin Isava Dimyan Belvad. He says, that itself is Amshach Min Atzmos. Why is that a problem? I understand. Atzmos can transmit Eir and he can create existence. So why? What is it? He did not create another Atzmos. He created something that's an extension of himself. However, from our point of view, the existence, because of the tzimtzum, which is also real, we only see the outer dimension, like the student that only sees the outer seichel, but the teacher sees the inner within the outer. So he sees himself also within existence. That's what Hashem wanted. He wanted Tachtenim, and he wanted to see himself there. Our avodah is to reveal that. What is, I'm not sure what's bothering you.
No, you made something very clear to me, even though that I'm not 100% clear, that it's not an illusion. An illusion, you see a screen and you see things, it does not happen. So
That's why in Mika Moicha, the Reb Marash says, the fact that Eibishter himself told us, Bereshis bara Lakim, I created existence. That means he did something. Now, what this existence entails, if I asked you, are you DNA? Are you cells? Is everything in this world microscopic subatomic particles? You say yes, but it has an outer shell. It's not just energy. The energy has manifested itself in the shell, and the shell is also real. However, we only see the outer sense.
That makes sense. But the difference is that when you're talking about Atmos, the outer part is real, but the reality.
And it's one with the inner part. That's what he's saying.
But the reality is that this is Atmos. It comes in a different way. But
I don't know what more I can say. But it's not only, there's only one God. A stone is not God, God forbid. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
That God creates something, and that thing is an extension of him, does not make the stone Atmos. It says that the stone is, from Atmos' point of view, all it is an expression from Atmos. But the stone is still a product, not a producer.
How could you say it?
That anyway, I don't know what more to say.
Okay, yeah.
I'm. What are you asking me? Are you asking me whether existence is God? Is that what you're asking me?
No, I'm asking you, how is it possible there should be something existing besides?
Because God created it. God created something. He wanted something to be.
The ones, but it's, you said everything.
What's the problem? He can't do it?
The whole idea is that...
One second. He has the power to not create. He has the power to create. He has the power to reveal, create an existence like ours. Why is that troublesome? What is the chiddush here is he's telling us how God sees it through his eyes, in contrast to how we see it through our eyes. That's the main thing that he's adding here. But the ability to do it, I'm not sure what the... Anyway, as I said, this can take a long time to wrap your head around. I'm going to try to explain more and more of this as we go. I want to bring in a few sources that I've not yet addressed. I want to say one more thing I wanted to say was, what was I going to say? Yeah. Oh, the key thing to remember is that it's our mitzvah. He calls it the mitzvah. Neshamas Yisrael have a mitzvah. That we have a mitzvah to be yachid. That's our job. For neshamas to come into this world and demonstrate and declare and actually actualize this yichud in reality. And that's why we say Shema and Baruch Shem and Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. So we have a job to do. And I think it's critical. Even with all this being said, from Atzma's point of view, it's been thousands of years for us hard work of revealing these levels of yichud. And it's only when Geula Mashiach comes that we'll see it really in full glory. So keep in mind, with all this awareness of how Atzma sees it, still requires plenty of work from our end to make it manifest. Like I said, even Bitla Yesh is so difficult, let alone these higher levels. But you see how Chassidus really wants the top. They wants to go all the way to the highest possible level of Yichud. Okay. So, any other questions before I continue here? So what I want to do now is this.
Can I ask a question, Rabbi?
Yeah.
This, real quick, on the last point you made, that it's a mitzvah to be miyached in this way, that we can show that it's all stemming from Atzmus. Is that different than the general imperative to make this world a dira? Or is it essentially the same mitzvah? Meaning that by being godly, by showing that we can be godly and we can bring godliness into this world, we are actually showing that yichud. So they're essentially the same imperative. Or no, are they different as you see it?
Same imperative. The same imperative. It's just, it doesn't say from the Tayyag mitzvahs, doesn't say one of them is Lasus Leis Baruch Dira B'Tachtenim, because it's really the theme of all mitzvahs. But it's essentially the same idea. Now remember, mitzvah of Yichud also has to be explained. What does that mean? Does it mean contemplation, like Shema and Baruch Shem? Does it mean prayer? Does it mean bringing to V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha love, emotions? Does it mean also bring it into action, which would really be all the mitzvahs? Which is why I think he said these words. Let's just read inside. He said, so he says clearly that the mitzvah of Yichud, Shema and Baruch Shem, is Yesed Kol HaMitzvahs.
Where does he say that? Where does he say that?
Several times on page 1466, as well as on page 1441.
Okay, thank you. I mean, if you think about it, there's a number of mitzvahs where we literally say the Shem Yichud Kudshay Bricha. We say it literally. Not everybody, but there's a preamble.
And he discussed this, yeah. And he discussed it. If you go back also on page 1441 and 1466, he says it explicitly.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Now, okay, so being time is limited here, but I'll go a little more. So there's a Sefer HaSichos Torah Shalom. This is a collection of talks that the Rebbe Rashab gave over the years that are more, a sikh is more informal than a mimer. I have mentioned it in the past, but I want to give a small, so there the Rebbe Rashab speaks a lot off the record, so to speak. When I say off the record, I don't mean can be publicized. I mean, it's not the formal language of a mimer. He'll speak a lot more like, if you were sitting with the Rebbe Rashab and asking questions, he would say a lot more things than he would say in the formal language of a mimer. So there's a lot of very powerful stuff there. But I want to learn with you guys something from, I believe it's from Tofresh, let me find it right now, Tofresh Ayin Daled. Could be Simchas Torah or Yitas Kislev. Let me look it up. I actually gave once a series of classes in one piece in Torah Shalom. You may remember about sexuality and chassidus. I have it online in case of you. Very fascinating stuff. But that's not what I'm going to do now. Let's see here.
You were teaching from that sefer when you did that series?
I learned it inside. It's on YouTube. You could find it. It's very, very powerful piece where he talks about intimacy and the power of sexuality, and that chassidus has that power as well. And that's why chassidus is the best antidote to sexual, let's call it indulgences. It's very subtle and very refined the way he speaks about it, but it's very. It was a few years ago, a good few years ago. I gave classes.
I'll see if I can find it. I'll post it if I can find it.
You just search intimacy and chassidus or something like that.
Okay.
If you can't find it, Anyway, I'm referring to Yom Simchas Torah, Tofresh Ayin Daled, which would really precede, which is actually middle of Ayin Beis, when Ayin Beis was delivered. So Ayin Daled would be the year 1913. So we're talking about actually, now we're 2023. So 90 years ago. So I want to learn with you a section of that. Obviously, I'm not going to teach it today. But I will tell you, I'll put the pages up on the group. I'll just take a picture of them. Basically, talks about the mitzvah of Yichud, and speaks about Yichud Mamayla Lamata and Mamata Lamayla, which may remind you that in Ayin Beis, of course, he's been speaking about the interface in both directions as well. And it goes for a good few pages, but there's especially one section that is very, I think, going to be very helpful to understand what we're discussing now, including Rav Shlomo's questions and other questions of what does it mean how God sees existence and how existence sees God. Now, you may remember there's an expression from I think the Friedrich Rebbe brings it. Alts is Gott and Gott is Alts, which means everything is God and God is everything. And the Rebbe actually has a letter in English where he explains what's the difference between those two. What does that mean? So I think it's also relevant to our discussion. And then finally, one more piece I want to bring is Chukas Tovshim Mem Ches. Pasha Chukas Tovshim Mem Ches, which I'm looking at right now. And I really, really feel, this morning I had a whole pang of regret that I didn't learn the Ayin Beis when that sikh was written. So there's a whole discussion there about God's relationship with existence and God's relationship with neshamas. The unification between the two. And now that I'm reading the Ayin Beis and I go back to that, it seems to me they both can really complement each other in understanding. So as I said, what I want to do in the next class or two is discuss these two pieces of Torah Shalom and Chukas Tovshim Mem Ches. I think it will help us understand this Ayin Beis piece. And hopefully after that, we're going to move to the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe's Maimar. That's what I would like to do.
Can you take photos of those and post it before the class so some of us can prepare?
Yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So, how's everybody? Okay, what else are we doing? Let's see what happened. Oh.
There are powerful things in this Simchas Torah. I think it's Ayin Daled.
It's Ayin Daled. Simchas Torah. Yom Simchas Torah Ayin Daled. Yeah, for sure.
You want to turn off the recording?
Yeah, let me stop here. So we're reviewing the end of Ayin Beis and setting the stage of discussing different connections to it, different explanations, and then going back to the previous memoir. Good.